this week's drive, we pitch a fast fighter against the red racer. Charge through a desert sandstorm. Join a world champ in a new class. And go up and over in Hong Kong. All this and more in this week's Drive. Formula One is about speed, desperate duels, spectacular overtaking moves, tactics, and safety. Next to having a safe car, having a safe racetrack is an important part of getting everyone home without incident. So, in track design, there's an ongoing search for improvement. Take Silverstone as an example, home of the British Grand Prix. Once a World War II aerodrome, it's a fast and flat track. The aim here is to find a compromise between safety and excitement for spectators and drivers.
Silverstone has markedly changed in recent years. My compliments to Silverstone. They always went with the newest trends and tried everything in their means, because one must say that the layout is pretty old. I always like driving here.
One of the most important elements of a safe track are the runoff zones. Tarmac, as used at Silverstone, slows the car and keeps it from hitting the wall. Ideally, the driver can regain the track. But big runoff areas mean the grandstands are often a long way from the track. Debris fences have been made taller to protect marshals by stopping flying parts in a crash. Despite very high speeds achieved there, Silverstone is one of the safest tracks on the Grand Prix calendar. In contrast, the Hungaroring was regarded as being safe, but criticised as boring for spectators and drivers, having few places where cars could overtake. Upgrades at the Hungarian track focused on making it more challenging to drive. Turn 11, a gentle S-curve, was made into a tight right corner, permitting more speed on the straight and better braking and passing moves into the corner. The start-finish straight was extended by 400 metres and the corner's apex was moved. Faster overtaking manoeuvres are the result. There are many considerations in designing a racetrack, and the evolving technical capabilities of the cars, as well as creating a good show for the huge global television audience, must be taken into account. Many drivers' favourite track is Suzuka, although the Japanese track is too dangerous for motorcycle racing and has lost its MotoGP round. A slight shift of 130R and a minor adjustment in the Casio triangle are intended to make driving smoother here. An increasingly common feature of conversion work: asphalt runoff zones instead of a gravel trap. This cuts both ways as far as the drivers are concerned.
The trend is away from the gravel trap and towards asphalt. And this is a good thing in normal cases when all four wheels are in contact with the ground. The car just spins and you can continue driving. But as soon as something goes wrong, I am not so convinced about it.
Drivers' opinions are valued in Formula One. After all, they are the ones who have to drive on the course, so their input is important.
You know, the way the curves are built, how high they are, things that bother us, that we think it could be dangerous if you have an accident. You know, you go through a corner and you say, Jesus, you know, if I go off there, there's no tires, you know, things like that.
Runoff zones, crash barriers, tyre stacks, safety for the drivers, and for the spectators.
When a Formula One car loses control, it usually does so at a very high speed. In such situations, it can happen that parts fly off the car. It's thus very important to protect spectators, and this is guaranteed on modern racetracks by an FIA safety fence. These are very sturdy fences which ensure that anything that happens on the racetrack stays on the racetrack. In other words, they prevent a wheel from flying into the crowd, for example.
Everything that belongs on the track should stay on the track. The same applies to normal road traffic. Crash barriers protect drivers at dangerous locations. Most severe accidents don't happen on the motorway. It's the country roads that are really dangerous, and upgrades can help here too.
One important measure is to secure obstacles, for example, by placing crash barriers in front of trees. Speed limits used in a targeted manner are another crucial factor for road traffic safety. However, these speed limits must also be monitored at regular intervals. It's also important to create safe opportunities for motorists to overtake.
Only those drivers who are in control of their vehicles and who react correctly, even in dangerous situations, are driving safely. This is equally true in Formula One. And the drivers here are the best in the world and have the best cars. They know every inch of the racetrack, and the same 10 or 12 corners keep reoccurring. Not many road drivers have these advantages. No, not another newsreel of a conflict somewhere in the world, but the scene of an unusual high-tech race. The scene was set at Tuscany's Baccarini Military Airport for a speed test between the fastest man and machine in Formula One, Michael Schumacher, and Italian fighter pilot Maurizio Celli's Eurofighter Typhoon. Thousands of spectators turned up at the airport, and the entire spectacle was shown live on Italian television. Ferrari and Air Force technicians compared notes and made bets. The jet carried no weapons and weighed slightly under 21,000 kilograms, and the Ferrari weighed 600 kilograms, while the Eurofighter's top speed when airborne is listed at 2,500 kilometers per hour, and the Ferrari's limit is 369 kilometers an hour. Of course, a car relies on traction for acceleration, and the wet track wouldn't help, but this would have no effect on the jet. Dense air in the cool, damp conditions would help both engines produce maximum performance. In practice runs previously, the jet won in 3 races, but Schumacher wasn't behind the wheel of the Ferrari. It was an occasion full of pomp, with a military band to entertain the thousands of spectators. Earlier, they'd been treated to races between historic cars and aircraft, such as the Caproni 100 and the Alfa Romeo 8C 2300. As the jet and the Ferrari lined up on parallel runways and then went full throttle when the green signal came, the deep sound of a jet turbine mixed with a high-pitched Formula One engine. The jet accelerated down the runway. The Ferrari's power left a trail of water flying up into the grey sky, but not everyone was so easily impressed.
Aeroplanes should stay in the air. We support Ferrari.
Michael was taking it seriously. He backed up to the start line after creating a dryer patch for his own takeoff. The car won the first race over 600 metres in a time of 9.4 seconds against the aircraft's 9.6. In the second race, the jet won 14.2 seconds to cover 1,200 metres against 16.7. Then came the 900-metre decider, with the Eurofighter finishing in 13 seconds compared to the Ferrari's 13.2. It was this close. While the Ferrari's aerodynamics are designed to stop it taking off, the big problem for the pilot was keeping his aircraft on the ground through the finish line. The jet would normally take off after 5 seconds. 6 times world champ Michael was virtually mobbed by media and fans and needed a police escort to get to his car. Celli is now the chief test pilot for one of the companies that built the jet, but was formerly an Italian Air Force fighter pilot and an astronaut for the European Space Agency. Afterwards, he was modest.
Well, let's say there are 2 means of transport which share just one small strip of tarmac of approximately 1.5 kilometres. But each vehicle is king in its own element.
But if it was dry, maybe next year. The military vehicles known as Humvees, high mobility vehicles, spawned a civilian version called the Hummer, and now Hummer has a little brother, the H2. The brick-like design is instantly familiar and the phenomenal off-road ability is still there, but the H2 treats the humans inside it like passengers rather than ordnance. With signature Hummer looks and a comfortable leather interior, it's aimed at those who wanted the street cred of the military Hummer H1 but want to drive it every day. The H2's 82-inch height ensures it will tower over most drivers at the curb. The block of cheese styling has the Hummer trademarks of narrow windows, a vertical slot grille and close-mounted headlamps, and the rounded edges give the impression that the H2 was drawn by a cartoonist. It's even got clearance lights on top of the cab. Inside the H2, everything seems scaled up. The console and shifter are 20% larger than necessary, and chrome and leather abound. You could be inside the world's largest, most expensive Tonka toy. The H2 can ford 20-inch streams at 5 miles an hour and climb 16-inch steps and rocks without getting hung up, offering 10 inches of ground clearance. The H2's 6-litre V8 is good for 316 horsepower, and it's mated to a heavy-duty 4-speed automatic transmission. H2 pricing starts at $48,800, plus the usual array of add-on options. A large crowd gathered for the finale to the Formula One World Powerboat Championship season, Abu Dhabi the venue. Going into the 55-lap event, 2 points separated Guido Capellini and Scott Gilman. The world title was up for grabs, and it was double former champion American Gilman who got off to the perfect start. He made good use of pole position and built a healthy lead for himself. Gilman in boat 27 led reigning world champion Capellini in boat 1 as the field screamed around the calm waters of the harbour. Portuguese pilot Duarte Benavente, Leith Verroen of Saudi Arabia and Italian Francesco Cantando made up the top 5. The American led comfortably for 8 laps until engine trouble dashed his hopes of victory and a third world title. The crafty Capellini saw his chance and took advantage of Gilman's misfortune to charge into the lead before easing off to ensure he finished the race in one piece. As Capellini lifted off, Verroen saw the gap and sped past the Italian into the lead. Further down the field, Pierre London and Bob Trask of Australia collided on lap 42, and the Swedes' boat flipped over, although London escaped unhurt. The yellow flags were waved, but after the restart, positions remained unchanged to the end. Verroen went on to secure his first victory of the season, ahead of Portugal's Duarte Benavente in his career best placing. But all eyes were on the celebrations of Capellini and his jubilant team. He needed to finish 6th or better to retain the title. A satisfying conclusion to the year for Verroen, but he was forced to share the limelight with Capellini, whose 3rd place was enough to secure his 8th world title in 11 years. The 2004 Formula One season gets underway in Mumbai in India in the first week of March.
Your winner from Saudi Arabia, Team Green.
Right now, few would bet against Capellini going on to make it 9 world titles in 12 years. We stay in the Middle East, but swap water sport for the fine blowing dust of the desert and the new international racetrack being built near Doha. Believe it or not, this track will be hosting races in less than 10 months. Italian multiple world champion Valentino Rossi was on hand to attend the laying of a foundation stone and took time out to walk around the rudimentary course and inspect the track's layout. The track is unusually long at 5.4 kilometres and has 16 corners as well as a fast straight. By the beginning of October, this cross between a dust bowl and a construction site will be pristine race-ready tarmac, hopefully. Rossi and Carmelo Espeleta, the chief executive of MotoGP organisers Dorna, discussed the new track with Nasser bin Khalifa Al Attiyah, president of the Qatar Motor and Motorcycle Federation. They were waiting for the Prime Minister, His Highness Abdullah bin Khalifa Al Thani, who would lay the foundation stone in a ceremony. Also present was Australian Mick Doohan, also a 5-times world champion and Rossi's mentor while he raced for Honda. Doohan won all his titles in the now-defunct 500cc class, while Rossi has been 125, 250, 500 and MotoGP champion. The banning of tobacco advertising in many European countries has driven the rise of racetracks in areas such as the Middle East and China. Rossi was asked about his initial impressions of the track's layout.
For sure, it's strange at the first time, but I think it's in a good place. I see the track, and I think the design is good. The track is wide and fast. It's good for MotoGP. So we're waiting for comeback in October when all is ready.
At the end of last year, he left the all-conquering Honda team for the uncompetitive Yamaha squad.
Yes, I'm waiting for the first test because I don't know the level of the bike, and I'm very anxious to try the bike for understanding.
What is your, before testing it, what is your sense of sensation of this Yamaha?
For sure will be a difficult year, but I think we need time. We need time for develop the bike.
The first race at this track is scheduled for October the 2nd. Over in Dubai, 23 International Motorcycle Federation champions were in town for the annual awards ceremony. But beforehand, they enjoyed a series of races and challenges in the desert in aid of a motorcycle charity. Riders took part in an all-terrain vehicle race across the dunes in the middle of a sandstorm. This was won by Daniel Willemsen, motocross sidecar champion of the Netherlands, with Britain's Dougie Lampkin, trials champion, second. Willemsen obviously found the transition from 3 wheels to 4 easier to manage. Later, the motocross team of Willemsen, Cyril Dupre of France and Eddie Seal of Belgium took overall honours across all 4 events. Remarkably, Willemsen's finished in the top 3 in the World Championship for the last 7 years. Belgian multiple motocross champion Joel Smets got close to a hunting falcon. Rossi met Belgium's other favourite son, Stefan Everts, also a multiple MX champion.
I've been passionate about rallies for a long time. Maybe in the future I will do a race.
Is it different here at the sand, like other rallies you did?
It's very different because it is much slower.
Next, competitors drove 4-wheel drive vehicles up the highest sand dunes. Another sudden sandstorm cut visibility, changing the course literally by the second. Spanish trials rider Adam Raga was beaten by Australian Supersport champion Chris Vermeulen. As conditions worsened, women's trials world champion Laia Sainz, also of Spain, was placed behind British sidecar world champion Steve Webster and Supermoto world champion Eddie Seal of Belgium. The last competition, Group N Rally, was won by Valentino Rossi. The next day, the champions in the categories of enduro, motocross, trials and road racing were crowned by FIM president Francesco Zerbi. MXGP champion Stefan Everts claimed his 5th world title in a dominant year, which included winning the 125, MXGP and 650 classes on the same day at the final round of the season. He narrowly missed the 125 title too, winning every round he entered. The Supercross and MX champs included Dutchman Daniel Willemsen, Australian Chad Reed and Belgian domination of Eddie Seal, Steve Ramon, Joel Smets and Everts. The Trials Championship went 3 ways. Dougie Lampkin won outdoors, Laia Sainz won the women's title and Adam Raga won indoors. On the track, Valentino Rossi is a superstar in the making. Just 24, this is his 5th world title. For 2004, Rossi takes his talents to Yamaha, having done all his winning in MotoGP aboard Hondas. Thus far, Yamaha has failed to dent Honda's domination, but Rossi's looking for a new challenge.
He really is something else on a motorcycle.
And everybody say this year will be different because come the number 1 and number 2 from the Superbike and all have the factory bike and all. But at the end we are able to win. We are able to go on the podium every single race, and so we make a great job, I think.
The prize giving concluded a spectacular season of motorcycle racing. 125cc world champion Spanish teenager Dani Pedrosa couldn't attend the ceremony as he's still recovering from surgery to repair the injury to his feet sustained in Australia. Next year, the FIM celebrates its centenary of organising 2-wheeled competition. Last season's Superbike world champion Neil Hodgson has completed a test session aboard the Ducati Desmosedici, the machine he will ride in MotoGP this year. Englishman Hodgson has switched to MotoGP, joining Loris Capirossi, Troy Bayliss and fellow Superbike convert Ruben Zaus in the Ducati lineup. He moved to the Dantin Ducati team after cruising to last year's World Superbike title and now has to get to grips with his new 200-mile-an-hour plus bike. Neil has a familiar face alongside him. Zaus was his Superbike teammate last season and has also moved to MotoGP. The first day of the test was frustrating for the riders, who waited until after lunch before completing their first laps thanks to damp conditions and a minor oil spill. However, the sun shone on the afternoon and Hodgson was delighted with his first experience on the Desmos Adichie. He was asked how the four-cylinder bike felt compared to his twin-cylinder 999.
I've not done so many laps. I mean, it's the first day and the weather's not been so good, and we've had a few small technical problems, just new team and everything. But it's difficult to explain, but it's just so different. You know, it doesn't feel unbelievably fast, and I don't feel like I'm in a Formula One car or anything like that. It's just, the feeling is different, and for a rider, when you're on two wheels, the feeling is so important to you, and it's like it feels like I'm learning everything again, learning how to ride a bike again. But I mean, it's coming today. Even I'm started off really slow, and I'm just building up and trying to understand, so I don't go and make stupid mistakes early on.
The plain carbon fibre bodywork will be painted in time for the first round in April. The Convention Centre in Times Square hosted the second round of the Indoor Trials Championship. It was the first time the sport had been staged in China, and Japan's Takahisa Fujinami was hoping to get the crowd on his side and repeat his podium finish from the opening round in Monza. However, it was the big three of trials who made it to the final. Spain's Albert Cabestany dropped just 1 point in 6 rounds of qualification, but couldn't carry the form into the latter stages. He conceded 5 points in the third stage and eventually had to settle for third place with a total of 7. Dougie Lampkin, who's probably done more to put the sport on the map than any other rider in the history of trials, collected 5 penalties on the same stage, but managed to win the head-to-head race and guarantee at least second place. The 28-year-old 5 times indoor world champion still has all the skill and balance and will be a serious threat for the championship this year. But with 5 penalties, he made it easy for Spain's other preeminent rider, reigning champion Adam Raga. Following a poor qualification round, by his standards, the second event on the calendar appeared to be going the way of the first, but Raga shed just 1 point on the crucial stage, and that was for exceeding the time limit. Raga took a 4-point advantage into the lane race, and his first win of the new season was almost guaranteed. 10 championship points for Raga takes him level with Lampkin on 18, with Fujinami's 4th place finish keeping him 3rd overall. Cabestany's 6 points on the day take him to 10 overall, a point behind Fujinami. After Hong Kong, the competition resumes in Sheffield in England. Trying to sell a car can be time-consuming, but one driver thinks he's got the ultimate gimmick to catch the eye of prospective buyers. He's covered his Mini in leopard-style fur, inside and out.
You know what they want to do? They want to stroke the car. They say, "Can I please stroke your Mini?"
The 1981 Mini, called a Ferrari, has been transformed by its owner to look like a leopard with plenty of extras. Some a little on the wild side, like growling sound effects. It's certainly unique, but this herd of Animobiles could grow. He wants to do a Rolls-Royce or a Jag next. Prospective buyers might find the Mini's asking price a little frightening, though. The Mini stands at £25,000. A beast of a bill, perhaps, but some people wouldn't want to be spotted in anything less. So, whether you're wading through, streaking over, or dressing up, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.